Good evening, and welcome to Fuck Up, Level Up. My name is Sam Fuller, my pronouns are they, them, and I'm the Member Experience Manager at Advent Coworking, a creative co-working community, event space, podcast studio, wellness center, and art gallery. We are so excited to have you joining us virtually this evening for our quarterly event with a new name and a twist. Previously known as Fuck Up Night, our Fuck Up, Level Up aims to bring Charlotte entrepreneurs together to discuss mistakes they've made, lessons learned, and how they're killing it today. This evening, we're joined by Charlotte activists who, in addition to sharing about their own mistakes, will be covering some of the many fuck-ups of our society and what we need to do together to level up. This quarterly event would not be what it is today without our amazing Erin Breeden, the founder of Blue Tide Creative. Thank you, Erin. And we are so honored and very excited to be joined by our amazing host this evening, Ohavia Phillips, activist and host of the O Show. Amazing. Ohavia is truly one of a kind. A Charlotte influencer and a media maven. She is a successful media personality and MC across the city. Yes. She's also a thriving talk show host with her very own talk show, The O Show. All of this while getting her doctorate in business administration and educating the next generation on how to leverage their media skills. Ohavia says that she loves Charlotte and she loves connecting with amazing, impactful individuals to impact community. Her motto is, I'm ready to serve, and she does just that. Over to you, Ohavia.
Wow, y'all, literally, I was sitting here like, Sam! But hello, friends and family. Thank you all so much for joining us. Listen, we do not take this lightly, especially out of your busy evenings. You can be doing anything, but you are here rocking with us for our F Up Level Up night, and I am so excited to be here. Okay, so listen, y'all. I live here in Charlotte, but I'm from Brooklyn, and one of my favorite quotes is from the philosopher himself, Uncle Notorious B.I.G., and he says, turn a negative into a positive, and it is all good. And that's what I am so excited about with this conversation, because even with all of these servant leaders, activists, people you will hear from tonight, it is so important for us to not only engage and share what's really necessary, but also get to know each other better and inspire one another, which brings me to the amazing panel. And I can brag about them, y'all, but I'm gonna let them brag about themselves. Starting with you, Frederick Murphy. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking.
Absolutely amazing. So, Frederick, tell the people who you are. What organizations do you represent?
Yeah, so my name is Frederick Murphy. I'm a licensed clinical counselor in the city of Charlotte. I've been here for 10 years, started off working in the west side of Charlotte as the director of counseling at Johnson C. Smith University. Still heavily involved in that community from an aspect of counseling, providing services for individuals that are misdiagnosed, underdiagnosed, and sometimes forgot about. Also have a company called History Before Us, documentarian, just released a new documentary, Other Side of the Coin, Race, Generations, and Reconciliation. And serve on a couple of boards. One of the boards here in the city of Charlotte that I serve on is the James K. Polk historical site. What's not in Charlotte, it's in Pineville. But making sure to create an inclusive story, inclusive narratives, inclusivity in general with regards to ancestors who worked, I use that loosely, on that plantation. So we're going to do some great things in Pineville to help that story come to life. Absolutely. Right? So yeah, EAP counselor for the city of Charlotte as well as Mecklenburg County and UNC Charlotte. So that's what I do.
Nice. My favorite part is the UNC Charlotte part because I graduated from Charlotte.
Here we go.
Here we go. All right. Thanks so much for the work that you do, Frederick. And we're going to get to all the details about your documentary too, because I want the community to hear about that. Next up, we have the phenomenal Nada Merghani. Nada, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am so excited to meet you in person. Like when you follow people, it's like, okay. And you meet in person, it's like, oh wow. Whole day made. So Nada, tell the people about you, what organizations you represent, and work you do here in Charlotte.
Sure. I am the programs manager for Charlotte Pride, and I'm also the founder for Feed the Movement. Feed the Movement is a food sustainability group here in Charlotte. We feed freedom fighters, protesters. We also feed houseless folks. Prior to jail support being torn down, we were feeding the folks at jail support and supporting folks who were coming out of cages, especially in the midst of a pandemic. In October, we'll be hosting the Kitchen Free Store to donate kitchen supplies and appliances to families in need. So those are the two things.
Absolutely. But you do so much work, and really, really good work. I'm so happy to see you and have you here. For yes, I feel so spoiled today. And last but certainly not least, y'all. I was so excited when I saw your name. Kristie, love me some you. Kristie Puckett Williams, everybody. So Kristie, tell people, what do you do? What organizations do you represent and the work you do here in Charlotte?
Sure. So I work for the American Civil Liberties Union of North Carolina as a statewide campaign for smart justice manager. And I'm also a founding member of the Charlotte chapter of All of Us and None, which is a group led by formerly incarcerated people. I'm also a member of the National Council for Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls, which is a group that works to end the incarceration of women and girls. And I also sit here today in representation of Emancipate NC, which is a civil rights organization that works to emancipate folks in North Carolina by disrupting the criminal legal system. So most of my work is centered around my personal experience with the criminal legal system, but also in knowing that folks like me are the solution to the issues that we see in the system. And so using my experiences, my strength and my hope to dismantle and reimagine a more just and liberatory system.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Kristie, thank you so much for the work that you do. And what I love about everybody on the panel is that they basically put action behind the caption, right? So it's easy to say a lot online, but it's about doing the work in the community, and you all do just that. So let's get into it. I'm gonna start with you, Frederick, right? So first thing is, in the work that you do, what are some fuck ups that you've made? Got some real talk.
Yeah. So I believe the first thing was not believing in myself to a certain degree, but I felt like when I went to get the degrees that I had to make sure that I worked for somebody for 30 or 40 years, retire when I can barely enjoy retirement life anymore because I'll be old and perfect maybe at that point. But no, waiting to serve the way that I want to serve versus feeling like I need to be under this umbrella of control, right, of safety, if you will, without stepping out on faith, knowing that the Creator got me. You know what I'm saying? Because I had good intent in what I did. So that was the biggest F up initially. And when I was able to take that leap, when a cousin of mine who unfortunately committed suicide gave me this great advice 2 years before he did such, he said, there's never going to be a perfect time for you to do that, for you to start your own practice or for you to get involved in these different groups. So since then, I've been able to, just be deeply rooted in the community, so deep. So there's Coming to the Table unit that's here in Charlotte. And I don't know if anyone is familiar with Coming to the Table. It's a national organization for the descendants of the enslaved and the enslavers. And we talk about healing, we talk about racial injustices, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm on the committee for reparations there, Charlotte for Black Futures, on the committee for reparations there as well in the city of Charlotte. So that F-up that I originally had, after I jumped out, right, the bird jumped out the nest, I've been able to go full steam ahead and all these other things that I know I would not have had the capacity to do if I didn't F up, by not believing in myself at that point in time. So that's the biggest one, was not initially believing in myself, but seeking counsel with other individuals who have done so, that allowed me the opportunity to empower myself to do the things that I do now. So
Absolutely, 100%. I want to lean in a little bit more. It's funny because I see a correlation between, of course, what we call an F up, but negative, turn it into a positive.
Sure.
How did you take that stamina to do the work that you're doing in community? So it's like with that experience in that F up saying, but look, I'm going to go serve communities, be there, be about that action. How did you make that?
Because I like doing it. Truth be told, because I don't see a ceiling, right? I'm not confined to saying, well, I don't know if I want to get involved in that, because if I get involved in that, my work may hear it, and they may look at me funny, et cetera, et cetera. Simply because I enjoy doing it, and my gratification from being a therapist, as well as, hopefully being in most people's eyes, is just, knowing that I've helped somebody.
Right.
So I just transferred the energy into that 8 to 5, that 9 to 5. It's something that I got going on, and it's going to help the community.
Absolutely.
Future generations,
I love that. Basically, like giving the stamina to the communities for what we need. I love that. Now, I'm gonna take it to you. So, with all of your involvement and the amazing work that you do in the organizations, what fuels you to keep going? Like with everything happening in the world, the new headlines, sometimes it gets to be a lot. What makes you still show up, keep going 2 times as hard with all the work that you do?
The people. I remember one time I posted about an arrest that happened at jail support, and someone who was a veteran reposted it and said, "This country as it exists now is not what I signed up to serve, but these people are." And I really strongly related to that. We have a lot of issues right now in the United States. Like that's no secret, right? We have a lot of issues with Charlotte, that's no secret, right? But we have a lot of beautiful people in the city, a lot of disenfranchised folks, a lot of queer folks, a lot of Black folks that need support, that deserve support. And if I'm going to exist in this ideology that everyone deserves housing, transportation, and I'm lucky enough to remain employed in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, that I feel like I have an obligation to support the folks who are not as fortunate, because we're all suffering right now. And I think it's the circumstances that we exist under, and while also simultaneously knowing the people who live in this city and how incredible they are. I think those 2 things fuel each other, and to kind of like making you want to fight even harder for the people in the community you've grown to know and love.
Absolutely. And that's what I love, Nada, is that you're still serving in our backyard. Because a lot of times we see unapologetically, right? Unapologetically, and I love that. So with that, what are some shifts that you've seen in communities? With all the work that you're doing, what improvements have there been? What shifts have there been?
I mean, I guess what I think about more is the trauma that people have to suffer when those shifts occur.
Right.
Right. Those shifts don't come without a cost.
Mm-hmm.
And so as myself and our comrades, not included, who have been on the front lines receiving the police brutality, sounds really good when the police say, okay, we won't do any more chemical munitions. Okay, but you damn near killed us.
Yes.
So it's like not the explicit acknowledgement of what they did. It's like, okay, we're gonna do away with this. But without acknowledging the harm and the trauma that is also historical, but it's also right here today. And so for me, those are the shifts that I've seen. It's also a shift in our awareness. We have become more literate as it relates to policing, and I think that literacy is what is causing police to make some shifts, because we're looking at how they're funded, what is funded, what is the majority of their. They're not used to the type of transparency and accountability they require of us. They're not used to having to reciprocate that. And so what we're asking for, what we're demanding, what we're not going to stop until we get is that accountability and that transparency. Well, so for those people who are elected officials, it's, it is holding them accountable, not just on election day, but getting them on the record, asking questions of them so that they give you their answer, and then comparing that to their actions. And you can say, hey, on this day you tweeted or you said in this meeting, and now this thing is not happening. And so like, where are you at on that, right? And so it's you holding them accountable every single day, not just when it impacts you or your family, but it's also knowing the power. It's also knowing how the power of the community is much greater than the power that we lend to elected officials. If they're not elected officials, then what you have to do is, if there's someone like the city manager or the chief of police, you have to lean on the folks who are their bosses. So the mayor and city council are responsible for their interactions with policing, and that is the route you go. The sheriff is a little different. The sheriff is the top law enforcement official in a county. And so no one can really do anything about a sheriff's behavior except for someone to maybe bring a civil lawsuit, or for voters to vote that person out. Maybe city council to take some of their money and their funding. But we have to be careful when we ask for a sheriff's funding, a sheriff's office to be funded, because one of the first ways that they're going to try to make up for that is off the backs of incarcerated people and their families, through fees and fines, within the court system, inside of the jail. We know that there's going to be a $2 billion deficit in the budget next year. And we know that if we don't get out and vote and do things differently, that this legislature in North Carolina will require that those debts be paid by poor people and their families who are not.
Right, and this is so important, y'all, and I want to take that moment to pivot and say, oh, and a lot of times we politicize, oh, mail-in versus, well, I don't care, pull up to the polls, because we're seeing where a lot of our city leaders are not being held accountable, or nobody's putting their feet to the fire because they're not showing up in the most important time in history and beyond. So yes, I want to take that moment to say vote, but I want to live there a little bit more. Frederick, in your sphere of the work that you do, how do you hold leaders accountable?
Yeah, so it's one of these things in which it's obviously voting,
Yeah.
right? It's attending any, obviously we're in COVID now, so now we have to attend all these different city council meetings, et cetera, via Zoom. But it's even making yourself present on those by commenting, right? By taking down notes,
Right.
by having your cheat sheet with regards to who it is that you do need to back and who you do not need to back
Right.
when it comes around to election time. And it's showing up to the polls,
Yeah.
right? It's holding people accountable and showing up to the polls. Social media, right? Just like you said, it's like, remember when you said X, Y, and Z? Right? Screenshot that.
Right. A bullet point with the
You
screenshot.
take it down real quick.
Receipts, yes.
Right. It was only 2 seconds.
Right.
Somebody just screenshotted it.
Right.
So it's doing those type of things. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Holding people accountable.
Absolutely, I love that. I found an article from the Cornell Sun, a writer, they were like, at the end of the day, it's about pulling up online, but especially offline, it's easy to get caught up in performative acts.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but we see you and how you're trying to hold this crown for this cause, but we're gonna hold you accountable. So that was a good point that you point out, specifically talking about social media. So Nada, for you too, in your sphere, how do you hold leaders accountable as well? Like, hey, listen, these are the deliverables we asked for. At what point do you say, okay, you know what, y'all not doing it. I'm on it. I'm on it.
I mean, I'm a big supporter of the idea of taking it to the streets.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we're a food service group. We're dedicated to keeping the freedom fighters that are around us. And I think a lot of times when we talk about freedom fighters, when we talk about protesters, people have this idea in their head, and these are like privileged white communities who are coming out to terrorize the town. But like, this is Charlotte. That's happening here in Charlotte. Like, they may have led you to believe that that's happening in Portland, but it's certainly not happening here in Charlotte.
Right.
A lot of the times, especially at the food table, the people that we're seeing that are the freedom fighters, that are on the front lines, are people who are houseless as well, are people that are disenfranchised as well, are people that are fighting and advocating for their rights because they literally have to.
Right.
So we support them, partially just giving out food, because at the end of the day, like, if you are fighting for your rights all day, if you are marching for 4, 5, 6 hours all night long, and you haven't eaten all day, you're gonna get sick. And at the very least, we think that people deserve to be sustained. We think that protest needs mutual aid, and mutual aid needs protest. These things are constantly simultaneously lining with one another. So yeah, like, take it to the streets. We'll keep you fed.
Absolutely, I love that, and that's like actually a major pull up. I had the privilege of going to like 4 demonstrations, and I remember. And so thank you for the work that you do. So let's pivot a little bit, you all, and talk mental health. With everything that's happening, and I'm gonna start with you, Kristie, everything going on, how you continue to show up for communities, how do you not become consumed by the headlines, right? So most recently with the Breonna Taylor verdict, I know for me, I had to like take a social media fast. I was like, give me my hit. But how do you not become consumed and still stay fueled for the work that you do in communities?
Because this is not my largest struggle that I've had.
Yeah.
I've always been Black in Charlotte.
Yeah.
So the biggest struggle in my life taught me, which was an addiction, right? I had an addiction to crack cocaine for many years. And so the thing that taught me the most was that pain is the greatest motivator for change, and that when it becomes painful enough, you will do something about it. And so I learned that recovery is not a journey. It's not a destination, it's a journey. It's like all the tenets of recovery that I learned how to stay clean. I still practice those things. I've been clean 11 years, right? And so you can't get to long-term recovery if you're not still doing those things. And so I just continue to practice what has sustained me in these 11 years. And no matter what has happened, not only have I not used, but I've also not lost sight of the prize, which is freedom. I have a North Star. And I have a torrid history of felonies, right, and convictions. And so those shackles are still on my feet. And so for me, it's a freedom march that we're marching. It's a march for our lives. It's a march for my kids' lives. And so for me, I'm just compelled, despite the toll. I take some days off. I go to the beach. I get massages. People send me all kinds of things. Thank you to everybody who has sent gifts and money and things for us to take care of ourselves, down to good shoes that I would never buy. You know what I mean? I'm not a tennis shoe person. So I literally bought tennis shoes for me to march and walk in. So all of that keeps me going. Even when, I don't read the comments. I don't feed the trolls. That is the biggest mental health thing you can do to yourself, is to just not read what they say. It's not that you can't accept dissent, because that's not it.
Right.
But a lot of this is just not principled dissent. It is attacks on your character, on your family. You know, and I do my fair share of that out on the streets as well. So I'm okay with it coming back, but I can pick and choose to.
Absolutely. Wow. So all I'm gonna say is that's what we do. And I'm gonna toss it over. Okay, so we're gonna have a 20-minute break. No, I'm kidding. I was like, y'all, I'm just seeing times and we're so excited. I honestly could have kept going because Kristie fueled that fire for me. And other people brought that up too. The community is basically showing up for you because you continue to show up for them. And that's what's important. Frederick, let's talk mental health.
Yeah.
How do you manage, not become consumed, and continue to show up for the community?
Yeah, so as a therapist, sometimes it's very difficult because the very first thing that I did with other therapists when everything started going down was, and this was back in February, with the Elijah came. A group of us got together and said, hey, we need to do some pro bono therapy.
Yeah.
Because things are going to get bad. But we called it, right? And then, of course, afterwards, there were other things that had occurred that had just led Black and brown folks to a space to where depression, right, has kicked in even more. These microaggressions are there, right? They're more overt now versus, covert. And we take on a lot of that. I know in my caseload, I had like 8 or 9 free pro bono cases.
Wow.
So while it's very gratifying to know that you're able to do such,
Right.
You also can't lose sight of yourself, right? So you can't be the best for your clients or for people if you're not the best for yourself.
Right.
So for me, I'm always in the woods. I'm always hiking. I'm always mountain biking. I'm always hiking. Right? Like next week, I'm in not Gatlinburg, but Gatlinburg, in the woods, right?
Yeah.
I'm hiking. I'm out in the woods because not only just the vitamin D from the sun, but being in one with nature is just something that's freeing about that.
Yeah.
Specifically, when you feel that there's a sense of arrested development there for a second, because you have to be so even killed.
Yeah.
In making sure that you do the best that you can for other people that are hurting, so you don't necessarily fall in that same category to a certain extent. So I'm always out in the woods, saging like crazy, old school music.
Yes.
Right.
It's different.
I've kicked up my back taking the game.
That's a joke. Yes.
Yeah. With therapeutic grade salts.
Oh, that's another. Okay, that's a different level.
Not the very fine salt.
Right.
Kind of got to disappear, right? So so those are some things that I've been doing to keep on up.
Absolutely, yeah, because they always say you can't pour from an empty cup. Right?
No.
So it's like you gotta make sure, especially for the work that you all do, you gotta make sure that the mentals proceed. So now I want to take it to you. What are some ways that you practice mental health, make sure your mental's right for the service that you do here in Charlotte?
I think lean on your community is always the best answer with this, because when we're all out on the streets together, we're all advocating together, we're all getting brutalized together, arrested together. I'm not the only one who goes home and feels rough afterward. I mean, you know this too, right? Like, we all go home feeling and struggling with so many different things.
Yeah.
That it's sometimes the biggest relief is being able to just turn to the group chat and say tonight sucked.
Look, let's talk about that group chat now.
Tonight sucked. And there is so much value and strength in therapy and mental health practice. But at the same time, a lot of times these counselors that we're turning to aren't actively living this experience with us.
Right.
But the people who are on the streets with us are.
Yeah.
So while we should turn to therapy, we should turn to mental health, let's not ignore the people who are also struggling in the community with us that we can support by just listening to, by just sharing our story with them, you know? So I think especially in times like these, leaning on each other holds more strength than we acknowledge it to.
Absolutely, 100%. So, 5-minute break. Let me tell y'all something. Obviously, I want to keep going. Can you tell? I was like, no breaks. But we're going to let y'all go. 5-minute break. But before you go, listen, any questions that you have for our amazing panelists, be sure to include their name, or if it's for all of them, drop a question in and we'll see those and get those answered. 5-minute break. Let's get it. For those who are watching, Kristie hinted at something that's very important here in the city of Charlotte is upward mobility, or the lack thereof. So for those who don't know, Charlotte has been dubbed a tale of two cities. So it's one of poverty or prosperity. And according to stats, and you look this up for yourself, right? It says that children who grow up in certain neighborhoods don't get out of that demographic. They don't make it out of those numbers and those statistics. So the work that all these people are doing are critical. And that's what Kristie referenced. So I just wanted to give some backstory. But also, Kristie, I want to say this. Thank you for using your experiences to, I like how you put it, empower and impact, right? So it's not a you're wrong, I'm right. It's more so, how can we come together to serve our communities better? For sure, yeah. Nada, I want you to chime in as well on this. So with all of the societal F-ups and how they got our communities effed up, what are ways that you serve and your organization serves to kind of hold those people accountable, but also like offer resources to the community?
I think so. Feed the Movement is like not by far the only food service and food support group here in Charlotte, but I think we try to be intentional about stepping away from like the charity model or the nonprofit model and exist in more of a mutual aid model, as opposed to like maybe some other food service groups or just some other nonprofit groups here in Charlotte. I think a lot of times when we think of support works, we think of it existing as this form of charity where people who are in positions of privileges are like digging in their pantries and finding old cans to give to homeless people. We don't exist like that.
Right.
We think mutual aid means that whatever food that we're eating is also the food that we should be serving to people. So we believe in serving folks like high quality, good food. We believe that the folks who are being affected and being served by us are also the folks that should be working with us as well.
Right.
And jail support existed in that same model, which is why we collaborated so well with them, because while they existed to support folks who are recently incarcerated, a lot of times the people who would get support from jail support would be so impassioned by jail support that they would end up becoming the regular jail support volunteers. So the people that I was serving food to were also the people that were doing the work to support the folks that are just like them as well. So like the model that was created to where we can support each other and so well, right? Without the need for corporate intervention, without the need for these fancy $10,000 grants and these 501c3 statuses that are required to get these fancy grants. We as a community can literally say, we're gonna fund the work and the folks who are affected, you lead the work and we'll fall back and we'll give you what you need. And like that was so beautiful, the fact that we could create mutual aid to where jail support, especially, like the first thing I think of when I think of mutual aid, I think they built that model so beautifully to where this was a space where cis folk existed in, where Black and white folk existed in. Everyone was on the same page of we're respecting Black queer leadership. We're here for incarcerated people, to the point where they were able to exist in Uptown for over 100 days without any need for police intervention, because they were very serious about what they were there about. We're here to advocate against police violence and police brutality. So they trained their folks on how to do conflict resolution, where they would never need to call the police. They had mental health practitioners who were constantly on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to be able to provide mental health support for people. They literally, like, you hear a lot of times like people in politics say like, if we defund the police, if we reimagine policing, what does that look like? Like jail support showed us what that looked like in a lot of ways. So it was an honor to serve them. It's really incredible to be able to exist in a mutual aid space and to know that we don't exist in a charity model. The same restrictions that a 501c3 or a nonprofit might have, we don't have those. Like we don't have to have a board meeting to decide whether we're going to get someone a hotel room. We can just get someone a hotel room, make a pan of mac and cheese for them, you know, meal prep. So I really think that's it for us is creating that model where we're stepping away from charity, stepping away from a 501c3 status, and really learning what it looks like when the community just supports the community.
Absolutely. And Nada, you brought up a very good thought for me, is basically in historical context, how it really took a village, right? And that's what I love, is it's like, no, this is what we were always built to do. This is in our DNA. Like, nah, my village got this village and we come together, make sure we're all good. So that's amazing work. Frederick, I want you to chime in. I know you offer pro bono services as well, but what else do you do to ensure like community has what it needs when society got them effed up?
Yeah, so there's multiple things. So from a presentation standpoint, I go around and I provide a presentation titled Utilizing Film to Better Understand Historical Trauma in the African American Community.
Mhm.
Because a lot of people don't understand that that's what they're dealing with, right? And it's flared up right now. They don't know where it's coming from. They don't know how to name it
Yeah.
because it's been deeply rooted, and embedded in our DNA.
Mhm.
And now it's presenting itself like up front and center with everything that's going on, right?
Yeah.
So that's one way that I have done such. I forgot to say this, but I also work with Atrium, and I go into the school
Nice.
systems, and I'm a psychotherapist for middle schoolers
Okay.
here in the city of Charlotte. And alleviating the pressures of some of the parents who work in two jobs,
Yeah.
who can't muster up the conversation about race and other things because they're just flat out exhausted because of everything that they're doing with trying to keep a roof over their heads.
Yeah.
So I chop it up with the parents and I'm like, yo, I know that things are rough right now. Is this something that you mind that I put into our counseling session?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah. Because I ain't got it. Because I'm dealing with it myself.
Yeah.
Right. So having to talk about racial unrest, quote unquote, right? Discrimination and things like that, and giving them tools to be able to identify what racism is when they see it, right? Through conversation. And then also, I got a lot of friends that are, doing the great work that all of us are doing that I may see on social media or what have you. And if I see that they're struggling, I may reach out and be like, yo, you need some counseling?
Yeah.
And I'm not rich by any means, right?
Right.
Not from a financial standpoint.
Right. I was about to say
I'm a wealthy person.
You're wealthy.
Right. Spiritually and holistically.
Right.
But I've sponsored a couple of folks and reached out to some therapists to say, hey, you mind if I shoot you this amount of money for this person to get them some sessions? And they'd be like, yeah, Murph, it's all good. Let's make it happen. Right.
Yeah.
So I think just utilizing our resources. Right.
Yeah.
And to your point, sometimes it goes beyond reaching out to organizations and depending on organizations, right? Like you got to do it yourself, right? And you do it yourself. You don't tout, you just, you don't tout the accomplishments of saying that I did this for that person, et cetera, et cetera. You just want the person to do it, get well, and get back out there to do what we need them to do. So those are some of the things that I do.
Absolutely. And I love that. So all of y'all pull up. And for those who don't know, pull up was birthed from Miss Rihanna Fenty, okay, at the 51st NAACP Awards, where she said, listen, I don't care where you're from, what you do, what your background is, pull up for your friends. Pull up. And so what I love is that that's really what you all do. So now let's talk the pull up and collaboration. And Nada, you hinted at this, so I'm right there. I wanted to know, so for all of you, but I'm gonna start with you, Nada, let's talk the power of collaboration in a lot of these, in what all is going on. How important is collaboration? How do you handle collaboration or people who want to collab with the organization that you're with in helping communities move forward?
The collaboration is so important,
Yeah.
like undoubtedly so. Like collaboration is probably the strongest tool we have in our arsenal as organizers, as activists.
Yeah.
Like as I've said before, like we are our strongest together.
Yeah.
Especially now when we're kind of like descending into fascism, existing in the midst of a pandemic, seeing more and more people be brutalized out in the streets. Like we do need to hold each other. As for collaboration, I think it exists well when everyone kind of knows their lane and stays in it. Because we're a food service group, so we know like our job is to show up, is to serve food, is to support the folks that are on the front lines, and to just protect our folks, because mutual aid is protest and protest is mutual aid, right? So a lot of times when we're out there in the streets, our focus is one, protect the food, make sure people are eating, but then also like the folks that we're feeding, are they safe right now?
Right.
Are they good? Do we need to get someone to the food table for a minute to help them decompress, to get them something to eat? So I think part of it is staying in your lane, knowing where your lane exists, what your work is, and how that can influence the group. Part of it is just removing egos from work and learning to just be able to work with other people regardless of your personal opinion on them.
Yeah.
And then part of it is just like knowing that we're all fighting the same things, regardless of like, or at least I would like to hope so, that we're all hyper focused on seeing a reimagining of what the police as we currently know them to exist now are, to end the disenfranchisement of Black and queer folks, to see especially Black women be able to survive and thrive and exist in a world that like is not constantly trying to bring us down.
Right.
So if we're all trying to get these same things, like no matter what, we're going to be able to collaborate together, regardless of my personal opinions on you, because like, I just want to see this world be better.
Absolutely.
And like the stakes are so high
Yeah.
that we can't really just exist in conflict. And I think we're at the place now where all of us see that. And it's unfortunate because like trauma is usually the thing that forces us all together. Like when there's a new killing, when something horrible happens, when someone's been traumatized or lost their lives, those are the moments where like you see people collectively saying like, we have to come together. And I wish that would exist outside of times of trauma, but part of that is just the system we exist under, where it literally forces so much trauma on our bodies that where we have to act as a result. But yeah, I think collaboration by far is the strongest tool we have in our arsenal as organizers.
Yes, and I'm gonna tell you this, and I'm gonna go to you, Kristie, as well. It's so important, and I love what you said about staying in your lane, because a lot of times with the work that all of y'all are doing, well, all the organizations are doing, is a lot of times there's people that kind of just jump this way and jump that way. It's like, look, let's keep on topic, let's stick to the narrative, and let's help the people that we said we're gonna serve. And Kristie, I wanted to ask you, so what are some ways that you use the power of collaboration with other organizations to progress situations here in these streets?
Yeah, I mean, so Nada said so much of it. I mean, I make sure that I kill the cop in my own head, right? That just like I don't want the police to be policing people, that's not my responsibility to police people either. And I working for the ACLU has taught me so much. You know, they were founded on First Amendment rights, right? And so the ability and the power of demonstration and the power of free speech is something that we should not take for granted. It's not something that we should be so willing to allow people to trample upon, right? And so for me, when I went out on May 29th, I definitely was not out to protest. I was there to be really nosy. People had told me that there was riot cops on Beatty-Ford Road, and I was like, riot cops on Beatty-Ford Road? Are you serious right now? Like, I got to see this. I mean, I've lived my whole life in Charlotte. Yeah, I got to go check this out. Like, and when I got there, they were literally, I was like, what? Charlotte out here? Like, this is crazy. Y'all look stupid out here. Like, this is Beatty-Ford Road. Like, what are you doing? Like, seriously, that was my attitude. Like, this is just crazy. And then to be arrested, and then to come out and see people waiting for me who waited hours for me to get out, right? And so that's where we saw the re-emergence of this jail support of we're going to keep going out, we're going to keep showing up for each other because collaboration is necessary. What we do know is if they will pick off a city council person and someone who works for a large nonprofit, that all of us are at risk for the police to do things to suppress our voices and to suppress our freedom to demonstrate and to protest, right? And so for me, it's important that we collaborate because we are seen as the guardians of liberty. That's what we call ourselves, at least.
I love that.
Right?
I love that.
And so my role out there is to document. I'm constantly talking to my colleagues about, you don't guess what they just did, child. Look at this video. Look at this mess. Right. And, you know, so they're like, oh my God, I can't believe that. And so like, you know, things start happening. And that my role is to participate, is to observe, but it's also to be knowledgeable, right? About when something is wrong. Because if you are just out there, you may not even know that they're violating your rights. Right. And so you might not know that once a dispersal order is given, like they really do mean they're going to arrest you if you don't leave. And so like helping in the moment, my offering is to help people understand what's about to happen to them. Right. As somebody who has been inside of that jail a million times, I can tell you exactly what the process is, what to expect. And not that we want people to get arrested. That is not what we want to see happen. Right. I mean, we want people to stay out of the system. I've been out of the system a long time, and now I have 2 arrests in the uprising. And so for me, you know, it's a heavy thing to enter into the criminal legal system again. Right. But I already know what to expect. What I feel bad for is the people who have 9 and 10 charges just for simply being out, who have no idea. Right. And they have no idea the weight of that criminal record on the rest of their lives. The state of North Carolina disenfranchises people with criminal records 900 different ways. And if we add in the federal government, it adds on 1,200 more ways people are disenfranchised. So that means anything from educational opportunities to jobs, to housing, to volunteering at your children's school. All of those things are impacted by a criminal record. And so we have young people who have no idea if DA Merriweather does not drop the charges, these folks' lives will be impacted for years and generations to come. And so that's why collaboration is necessary, because they wouldn't know that. They don't have the life experience to know that. And it's my duty as an auntie now.
Yeah.
Yes, auntie. I moved out.
That's it.
No, that's definitely
I done
it.
moved into auntie.
That's it. I'm not gonna lie. That's it. That's the one. That's the one. Right. Auntie.
So since I'm the auntie, I take that role very seriously.
Yeah.
These are my nieces and nephews. My responsibility is to ensure we keep us safe, is what we say. And so Nada keeps us fed, and I try to keep us out the cage. And if you do get arrested, Kristie gonna come bail you out.
Listen,
And if not Kristie, then Charlotte Uprising gonna come get you.
100%.
Somebody gonna come get you out the cage, and we're gonna connect you with an attorney pro bono.
Come on.
Right?
Yes.
So that you don't have to be worried, and we're gonna hook you up with the counselors pro bono to help deal with the impact. Because this is not a light load to carry.
No,
It's not.
Absolutely.
I can attest to this because
Yes.
Kristie literally bailed me out.
Kristie literally bailed me out. I love that. No, seriously, you really are the auntie for real. And what I love is what you hinge on about educating, right? Because a lot of times, and I know for young people, I saw with the 4 demonstrations I went to, they are out there and they're like, Miss O, what we doing? I'm like, hold on now. Let me get the professionals because Miss O can't tell you nothing, right? But it's so important to teach them what it is. Also, just the consequences. And I use that word loosely because it's not. When you show for your community, it's not a consequence, right? It's a badge of honor. It's good trouble in the words of our great John Lewis. But it speaks a lot to how you spend the time educating, and it's a beautiful thing. Frederick, 30 seconds or less. How does collaboration push communities forward with you?
It's the key to self-perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, without them, it's just difficult.
Yeah.
You can't collaborate and have individuals to pat your back and vice versa, or to lift you up and vice versa, then, you're going to have a rough road ahead. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we got into the personal F-ups, which is so funny because yes, they're F-ups, but they're level ups, which is why I love the name of this, because that's what we do with all that happens. So now let's move into societal F-ups. There's a lot going on in the world, and I love how Nada put it. There's been a lot going on. I think that now we're in this work, we're committed to this work, and we're going to stick to doing this work. So I'm going to start with you, Nada. What are some societal F-ups that you're seeing that you're like, are there ways that you've called them out? And what are things from your vantage point that you're like, that's an F-up? That's it.
There's so many.
I know.
Like there's so much.
We'll be here for a little bit.
Focus on.
Yeah.
I think what I can say in this moment is a lot has been going on for a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
We've been seeing queer phobia, transphobia, violence against those providing mutual aid, attacks on folks who are incarcerated, as well as folks who are currently formerly incarcerated as well. And all this has existed prior to Trump.
Right.
Like I had someone message me this morning who watched the debate last night and was just like, I'm so scared. Like I didn't realize all of this was happening in the world. And like me being out of the protest, seeing like the nights where 5 different cars run into the crowd. I'm like completely aware that white supremacy exists in our streets. Like I'm completely aware the Proud Boys are present. I'm because they flashed their guns at me at the protest, because they ran over my friends at the protest. So I think for folks who are just now starting to get it and just now starting to realize the extent of like how far down into fascism we've gone in the last couple of months, because like I think it's really starting to hit some people how bad it's gotten. Like, because mass incarceration is not new, but they're starting to hit them because now like their white child is getting arrested, and they're like, oh my God, what am I? My child has a record. I never thought Amanda was gonna do this. Like, I'm so confused. But we're seeing now people realizing these things exist. Right. So I think as folks are falling into this state of realization, I think one of the first things to acknowledge is like the folks who are on the front lines who have been telling you that this is happening for the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months are not lying to you. So maybe it's a good idea to start listening to them now.
Absolutely right.
And also lean on your community again, because like we're all experiencing this. For those of us that are on the front lines, we probably experience it as like a little bit of a higher level than others, but everyone is experiencing this. And beyond that, we're experiencing it in isolation because most of us are quarantining or social distancing as a result of the pandemic. Yeah. So lean on each other, care for each other, because like it's likely not going to get better anytime soon, regardless of kind of who wins the election or what happens soon. Because like, regardless of what it is, we probably will not see a peaceful transition of power. So like continue practicing mutual aid, continue asking your friends, like, have you eaten today?
Yeah.
You know, especially at the beginning of the month. Can you pay rent this month?
Yeah.
Have you paid your bills? Like, are you good? Are you going to have transportation? Are you going to have housing? Are you going to have food? And raise money for folks. Like, and we've talked about social media. Like, me and Kristie both know, like, social media is a really powerful fundraising tool. And it takes nothing to sit down and make a post and say, hey, this person needs $100 to stay in their home. Can we collect $100 for this person in the next 20 minutes? And for them, that $100 would have taken them weeks. They would have likely lost their home. But if we social media fundraise, and if we really exist in this model of mutual aid, where it's like, all right, I have $20 extra from this paycheck. Let me give it to someone who lost their job as a result of COVID-19. Instead of waiting for an organization or a nonprofit to kind of exist in that space. Especially when we know, like, the shelters are at capacity. People are just being given tents and put in tent city. And as more and more evictions happen, we're seeing more and more people fall into this space of houselessness, of impoverishment. And we're not seeing nonprofits or support organizations really step in and exist at a higher level. Because like, we need them at a higher level because of COVID, but a lot of people are instead reducing their capacity as a result of COVID. So yeah, I think, like, we have no choice but to exist in the mutual aid model, because, like, the 501c3 model, the nonprofit industrial complex is only going to get us so far.
So true.
So yeah, just empathy and care, because the things that you're seeing and are realizing are starting, or not you, but like things that people are seeing and realizing that are happening now have been happening for a really long time. And especially the folks who have been in hyper marginalized position, like myself, who's queer and Black and Muslim and an immigrant. We've known these things have existed for a long time because we've had to feel the effects of them before maybe they've started to hit, like, the white suburban communities. So hear us and protect each other.
I love that. Hear us and protect each other. In the same vein of societal fuck-ups, friends, we have your questions and we're going to get them answered. Frederick, I'm going to start with you. So this was a question from someone watching. What are ways we can help attract and draft better candidates to run in our elections for local offices? And everybody could hit on this, but what are ways we can help attract and draft better candidates to run in our elections for local offices?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things in which we have to gather, right, as a community, and be very assertive with regards to what it is that we know that we need in order for things to change in a positive situation, right? You always have individuals that come to your communities that tell you that they know what's best for you. But hello, you don't live in these communities, right? You don't walk in this skin. You don't go to sleep in this skin. You don't wake up in this skin. You don't look in the mirror on a daily basis at this skin. And even though we know it's beautiful, the outside world may not necessarily agree with that, right? So I think it's us gathering from a community standpoint and saying these are the demands which a lot of communities are doing right now with regards to saying what it is that they need, and voicing that, right? And telling that we need to tell them what it is that we need. We don't need for them to always come to us and give us pie in the sky, right? Because we've been given that since the beginning of time, right? So it's the ability to have some type of autonomy and say, you know what, in order to get our votes and everything, this has to be part of the agenda. And if it's not part of the agenda, then guess what? You know, we're just simply not voting. You know, you come into our HBCUs and our churches when it's election time only, and then we don't see you again until it's election time again. Like, that's an issue, right? So, and it's also being cognizant of that. Like, pay attention to when people come around, right? Like, I did an oral history interview the other day, and the individual said, well, back in the day, and this was in the 60s, the politicians would come around with liquor into the African-American communities and have these little town hall, these little meeting things, and liquor everybody up, right? To get people's votes. And that's the way that they would influence individuals to pretty much vote on their ballot, right? For the, you know, on the ballot. But now, you know, things need to be put into the hands of the members in the communities to tell individuals what we need versus just listening to the pie in the sky.
100%. Kristie, Nada, do y'all want to chime on that?
I would just say pay people. What we pay public officials is so ridiculous that it only allows for people with privilege and power already to exist in those spaces. So like city council makes somewhere in like 20,000, 25,000, something like that. I know county commission recently gave themselves a raise, but it's still like 40,000 something. Even to be a state senator, or state legislators, like $11,000 or $12,000, and when it's in session, you have to be in Raleigh 3 times. So Tuesday, you leave on Monday night and come back on Friday. And so like, if you don't already have a job or a career or a legacy of wealth in your family, it's very difficult for people to serve. So I think a lot of it is just prohibitive because it's not paying people a living wage, and you have to either work another job or be independently wealthy enough. And then it's a lot to learn. They have to go to the school of government. They have to do all of these things, be away from their families. And we encourage, though, in this city, especially the wealthy, to only apply.
Yeah.
If you want to attract more people, a simple thing is to pay people.
Absolutely. No, that's facts. All facts. Did you want to chime in, Nada?
I was going to say, especially with Black folks, there's this idea that the other side is so dangerous that we're constantly restricted into like one block of voting, to where like we don't exist in this ideology that politicians have to earn our vote.
Come on.
If politicians do not exist in the same ideology that we exist in, we don't have to vote for them.
Right.
And like culturally, we now exist in a place where we are so scared, where like we can't really vote to our interests because we're so scared of what the other side is going to do and what's going to happen if the other side gets reelected. That like we're no longer worried about our interests. We're worried about like not letting society fall apart because we understand that we as Black folks are going to take the brunt of it. You know? You see a lot of like young white folks coming into movement spaces for the first time, very excited about this idea of like a revolution happening. But like, as much as we want to see that revolution take place, we know at the end of the day, the people that are going to be the most affected by a revolution, by a civil war, kind of whatever happens, it's going to be poor Black folks. It's going to be marginalized queer folks. It's going to be disenfranchised folks. We will feel the brunt of it before anyone else. So yeah, like our votes deserve to be earned the same way that, you know, white moderates demand that their interests exist on the ballot. We should demand our interests exist in the same way.
100%. They do have to answer to us. And I'm so glad you brought that up because that's something we forget a lot. It's like, okay, no, we're going to put them there and put them there. No, they're supposed to work for you.
And there's a lot of pressure from moderates and liberals, especially like white moderates and liberals, for Black folks to just like exist and to sort of like exist in this one lane and do things in a very specific way that ironically they don't put on their own people, you know? Because like white people can advocate for themselves, and you see it happening a lot politically, especially with like the Green New Deal. White people literally push for that to be included in Biden's policy. We, though, as Black folks, we're not able to push for defunding the police in the same way. No, we're just expected to vote because Trump is so bad that we just have to vote for the other side regardless of like it's. Yeah, we deserve to have our interests represented.
Absolutely.
People should be earning our vote, and it's okay. Don't let anyone make you feel bad for withholding your vote. That's fine too. People fought for your right to vote in the same way that they fought for your right to withhold your right to vote. Those two things exist simultaneously. They fought for both of those things.
You heard what they said. All right. So look, next up we have this question is, what's one action that you would like to see Charlotteans take today? Kristie, I'm going to guide it to you. What's one action that you would like to see Charlotteans take today?
I think Charlotteans have to make a decision about what Charlotte looks like. And we have to begin to have a soul and a character. We have whitewashed and we have torn down so much of the history in this city due to trying to attract business. And so we have to redefine, like, if we create a city that's beautiful, that is green, that is just, that is liberatory, that where trans folk are safe, where Black folk are safe, that's going to attract, that's the best seller for any business, to have a city full of people who are happy, who are content. I think we need to redefine, you know, what we're looking for in this city. I think we keep trying to attract business, not understanding that those folks who bring their business here are going to bring their families here. And we can't keep making sure that Matthews, Mint Hill, and all the suburbs are well sourced and financed, because folks who work in the city then take their wealth out to these other areas, and so they build up the suburbs based off the things that happen in Charlotte. And so like being conscious of that, and deciding who matters. I ride down 277 and I'm appalled that I see folks living in a tent under the shadow of Bank of America
Yes.
and Wells Fargo
Yes.
and
Yes.
Truist and all. And we are number 2 in the world for financial headquarters. I mean, we fluctuate between us and San Francisco. It just depends, right?
Right.
On what mergers happen. But still, to be in the top 3 in the world
Yeah.
for money, but to also simultaneously be 50 out of 50
Yeah.
for upward mobility
Yes.
shows who we've been catering to. We have not cared historically about Black people. When we are marching, we say, Black people used to live here. Black people used to live here, right? And so like, that's a thing because what it says, gentrify, fire, gentrify, like all of that has led to the violence of poverty that we exist up under in the city, right? We talk about the crescent and the wedge, but those are intentional decisions made by system leaders that have created a crescent and a wedge. And just like they created through legislation, through policy, that crescent and that wedge, they can undo it as well. They are choosing to allow us to exist in this disconnected space.
Wow, and poverty is violence, and I'm so
Poverty
glad.
is violence.
Ooh, Nada, Frederick, did you all want to chime in on that?
Education.
Yeah.
I mean, what is it? 3 years ago, Charlotte was the most segregated school system in North Carolina. I see it by being in the schools. I work in some of the most impoverished schools, and you know, the lack of intentionality with regards to making sure that these babies get the same opportunities that an Audrey Kell gets, et cetera, et cetera. You know, it's heartbreaking. You know, I was in a school, well, I'm not going to name the school, but last year during the winter, it was almost a week and we didn't have any heat.
Oh, wow.
Like, it's crazy. One of the days they had to send the students home. So that's a day missed of education, right? So education, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have charter schools popping up in the areas that are predominantly African-American. And there's actually public schools in those areas, and they may be ranked 1 or 2, right? But there's a $700,000 house that's right next to it, right? And you like, well, where are your kids going? Oh, they getting driven across town to go to this other school, or it's a charter school that's, you know what I'm saying, exclusive to their specific kids, right? So education, man, I mean, we're suffering so bad. I think that historically, with the integration of the busing system here in Charlotte, like they still hold their head high on that, right? That's been so long ago, right? So pouring money into the education system so all the babies get a fair shot.
Absolutely. And Frederick, I will say this, I can attest to that too. I was invited to a school once and it was in the summertime and there was no AC. And I said, well, what are you doing for the kids? And it was that awkward, like looking like, and I'm like, absolutely not. Because if this was any other school, this would have been different. And, you know, those are the stories that need to be told more of. Because it's like, these babies in here hot and trying to learn, and then you mad because...
Well, I got a story just really briefly. So in the women's prison in Raleigh, there is no air conditioning. And so a story came out last year how there was a group that brought like therapy dogs in, and it gets so hot that they would no longer allow the dogs to come in. So the people can exist in the cage, but the dog is too hot to bring the dogs in, right? And so like those type of punitive and lack of care and regard for Black folks happens in all spaces and in all systems.
Absolutely.
Not just the educational system. It's in every single industrial complex, because
100%.
Black bodies are commodities. We were the original currency in this country, and we continue to be the currency of this country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they build a trend off of the culture, but won't show up for us when we need them. But that's a different discussion. Frederick, I'm going to guide this towards you. You all mentioned the importance of mental health. What's one thing that you do to support your mental health every day? We kind of actually chimed on that. And I want to get to everybody's questions. So let's get to it. Ooh, Nada, you're going to like this. Mutual aid is so critical. What are some first steps toward building these relationships within our communities?
First step is probably we talked about it a little bit, is stepping away from the 501c3 model, the nonprofit industrial complex model. It's developing confidence in yourself and in the folks who also care about the same work that you do, and knowing that y'all have the capacity to do work better than organizations, better than people who are getting these $1,000, $100,000 grants. So that's the first step, and that'll help you build confidence in yourself and confidence in the group that you're working with. Step 2 is identify folks who also care about the same thing that you care about. So if you're doing mutual aid surrounding food, you don't have to get the best chefs in the city. You don't even have to get like folks who are actual chefs, just people who are passionate about cooking, passionate about community. That's basically what Feed the Movement is. It was a group of stoners who just really like to cook. And then we were also just showing up to the protest and like we didn't have a lane. So
Right.
we were just there like, and people were hungry.
Yeah.
So we identified a need. We knew that we had, and like a lot of us grew in our cooking skills through Feed the Movement. We knew that we had at least like the minimal skill set to be able to get this work done. Like we can make some penne
Yeah.
and like bring it out
and bring it
to
out.
the protest. And then I think another step that's important is collaboration, which we also talked about. There are probably other organizations doing the same work as you, if like maybe just in a different model or in a different space.
Yeah.
Learn from them, ask them questions, collaborate with them. And even organizations that are doing things that are different than you. Because like Feed the Movement, Jail Support did different work, but like we worked together so well.
Yeah.
Because they were able to distribute food. We were able to give food knowing that this was going to go to folks who are being released and houseless folk. We were able to do that every single day for over 100 days.
Wow.
So I think those are important things when it comes to building the mutual aid model. But like the most important of that is not feeling like you have to rely on the 501c3 complex.
100%. And so friends, before we wrap up, I'm 30 seconds or less. I want to go around. How can people support your work? 30 seconds or less. So I'm gonna start with you, Frederick, and we're gonna work our way around. Go.
You know, I think it's just paying attention to people's mental health.
Yeah.
Right. Paying attention to people's habits. When you see people down, ask the questions. Are you okay? Don't be afraid to ask if you're okay. You know what I'm saying? Like these things are helpful for us as therapists because you can stop a person before they really take a deep dive into depression or substance use, et cetera, et cetera. So be as assertive as possible and, you know, just be tactful with how you ask the question. Hey, you know, not trying to be in your business or anything, but I've noticed X, Y, and Z. Is there anything that I can do to help? Right. Versus us getting them when they're like literally the ice is so thin. Right.
Yep.
So for me, that's very helpful. And I know for other therapists, social workers, and people in human services, that's well work.
Yeah. 100%. I love that. Nada.
I'm going to take it in a different direction and say that our Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App are Feed the Movement.
That too.
Oh yeah, matter of fact, so let's go back. Share all that. Where can we sew into you? Sewing into you.
I'm selfless. So
listen, we're gonna research. We're gonna read. How can we sew into
So I do a lot of history projects and on things that are unjust and things like that. So at History Before Us what's the one? Cash App.
Cash App.
Yeah. At History Before Us at Cash App
Got it.
will help me with bringing these oral histories to life
Yeah.
and discussing and preserving history, which is so important, which, like you mentioned, Charlotte likes to destroy.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
So at History Before Us at Cash App.
Absolutely. And also that is social media handle. At History
Social media is at History Before Us. Website, historybeforeus.com, and you'll find both of the documentaries on that joint.
We love to see it. We love to see
Appreciate
it.
you.
Nada.
On Venmo and Cash App and PayPal, we're Feed the Movement CLT. Same with social media. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Feed the Movement CLT. If you have kitchen appliances and supplies in your home that are gently used and still clean and functioning, we'll be having a kitchen supply drive in coordination with Pour No More. It'll be a kitchen-free store where people can come in and just grab what they need for their homes. Because while we acknowledge that food sustainability and like feeding people every day is important, it's also just as important to make sure that they can go home and have the capacity to cook for themselves and their families.
Right.
So give us money, give us your instant pot, but especially give us money.
Yeah. Kristie. And especially give us money.
Especially give the money. So for me, my Twitter handle is at Kristie_1979. That's also my IG. Follow. More so than anything. If you want to give the ACLU of North Carolina some money, do that. Go to their website, www.acluofnc.org. If you want to pay me directly, because
yes,
a girl need coins too.
Okay.
Cash App is $Kristie, Kristie, Puckett, Puckett.
Absolutely. And listen, friends, thank you so much for joining. Give a virtual hand clap for this amazing panel. Literally so honored to sit before all of you all in the work that you do. And that we literally got a clap, and that's what I loved. A whole clap outside, ladies and gentlemen, of the virtual room. But literally, thank y'all so much for your time today and also showing how you show up, action behind the caption. Friends, I am Ohavia. Please be sure to follow my Advent Coworking family at Advent Coworking, also on Facebook, and keep the conversation going. I think the biggest thing is we think that this is virtual and it can live here and that's it. But no, see how you can show up in spaces, see how you can be a part of the solution. And enough with running the mouth. Let's run up to the polls. Let's run up to time, talent, and treasure. Give where you see a problem and stop complaining. I'm Ohavia. So excited to be here. And that's it. Thank y'all. Have a good night.